Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something more foggy than your last half-remembered relationship. The world of Victorian opium dens. Not the glamorous cloud of smoke in a movie kind, but the real, gritty places filled with all sorts of questionable characters, making questionable decisions while reclining on questionable cushions, all in pursuit of that sweet, sweet opiate escape. So before you get cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. I'm not into beggary unless it's for snacks. And while you're at it, drop a comment letting me know where you're joining us from, because every little bit of darkness needs a little bit of light. Now, dim those lights. Maybe put on a fan to generate that gentle whirring ambience. Get comfortable, and prepare for a journey where you might just ask yourself, have you ever wondered what it's like to tiptoe through a secret world of smoke and mirrors? How did one even enter an opium den without asking the wrong person for directions? Can you imagine navigating social interaction while half awake and half well, sipping liquid dreams from a pipe? What kind of company would you keep in a haze of poppies and strange laughter? And let's be honest, if your neighbour tried to start a debate about the meaning of life while you're lost in white fluffy clouds, would you laugh, cry, or just nod off? Now, congratulations, you've just woken up in a Victorian opium den. The year is 1850. You've got a belly full of poppy-fueled contentment, a hazy sense of purpose, and a strong desire to avoid running into any of your former life's responsibilities. Good luck. Welcome to your first experience in a Victorian opium den. Imagine the thick, sweet scent swirling around you like a cozy aromatic hug. As you step inside, it's like entering a realm where reality takes a back seat, and you're greeted by the slightly dazed expressions of patrons floating in and out of their own narratives. Kind of like a fancy coffee shop on a Monday morning, but everyone's too blissfully unbothered to notice it's a Tuesday. The dim light flickers like a hesitant firefly, casting shadows that dance across the intricately drawn wallpaper, where haphazard birds and whimsical vines become unsettling partners in crime. You find your bearings as the gentle hum of whispers flows around you, mixing seamlessly with a far-off chorus of laughter that sounds suspiciously like a bad joke you can't quite catch. Folks recline on plush cushions that might have been imported from somewhere fantastically luxurious. Or perhaps they've been absolutely cannibalized by local rats. Who can tell in the haze? The clinks of delicate Chinese tea sets pulse through the thick air like staccato beats in a dreamy symphony. And you wonder subtly if that tea's origin story includes a 10-step process of existential awakening. Definitely an upgrade from the Earl Grey you had this morning. You meander through the den, navigating a sea of floating silhouettes that look remarkably like the cast of a gothic novel relocating to the afterlife. There's an awfully well-dressed gentleman observing the room with a look of uninhibited glee. You can't help but wonder, is he laughing at a joke you missed, or is he merely relishing in the absurdity of life? There's science in this smoke, you reason. Maybe Einstein could have used a whiff of this stuff before explaining relativity, just to make it all float a little better. But there's always one person who takes their high more seriously than others. You spot a peculiar figure sprawled across a daybed, their aura suggesting they've merged with the cushions, an art form unto themselves. They seem to embody the essence of lethargy, challenging the concept of physics itself as they oscillate between consciousness and oblivion like a pendulum stuck mid-swing. Nearby, a poet scribbles his thoughts on a crumpled piece of parchment, delivering lines steeped in profound imagination, or potentially just gibberish. But then again, what's the difference after a few puffs? Before you know it, you've taken a seat on one of those fabulously enticing cushions, sinking deep into the realm of recreational daydreaming. The gentle pulsation of laughter and conversation wraps around you like a warm blanket, and with each inhalation, you can almost taste the metaphors floating in the air. You realise you're part of a collective consciousness here, a congregation of wayward souls searching for the elusive answer to the ultimate question. How do we get through life without succumbing to absolute boredom? Spoiler alert, the answer is decidedly in the smoke. As you mingle in this curious social landscape, you might spot an artist carefully sketching the walls with thin strokes, capturing the surreal beauty of dishevelled delight festooned by traces of forgotten tales. In a way, it's a lovely metaphor. What's life if not a collection of incomplete sketches stretched across the canvas of time? The artist's work undoubtedly reflects the nightly offering of opium intoxication, an ethereal limbo existing somewhere between marvellous highs and comically low lows. Your sense of time begins to stretch and distort. Is it still Tuesday? You check your imaginary watch and then dismiss it swiftly. Time has little meaning amid swirling fog and absurd camaraderie. Suddenly a hushed voice invites you into an obscure debate. How much reality can one person bear when they have the option to redefine their existence through the layers of opium and creativity? You can't help but ponder, wouldn't the entire world be better if we lent ourselves towards imaginative escapism every once in a while? Would there still be traffic jams if people opted for daydreams instead of rush hours? You're lulled deeper into this transcendental journey, where each breath enriches your spirit and each laughter echoes the wisdom of shared insanity. Somewhere in the back of your mind, a part of you knows this world is ephemeral, pristine in its beauty yet beatifically flawed. How could you wish for anything more? After all, within the confines of this opium den, life itself becomes a grand experiment, an invitation to explore, to dream, and to surrender unconditionally to the magic of chaotic artistry. In this thick haze of joy and laughter, you found a pocket of life where anything is possible, where creativity bursts forth like fireworks against a backdrop of captivating absurdities. It's all deliciously intoxicating, alluring, and most importantly, it's your whimsical escape from the mundane. We'll circle back to reality later. For now, let's bathe in this dreamy chaos. You glance around and lock eyes with the host, this one-eyed gent who looks like he's lost a fight with a very persuasive squirrel. He welcomes you with aloof charisma, his thin lips curling into a smile meant to either enchant you or alarm you. Good luck telling which. He gestures toward the plush cushions, the softest sense of comfort you've ever seen. But they might just be covered in the remnants of last night's philosophical debates about whether chips or chocolate are the real food groups. You wonder how this enterprising character came to run such a distinguished establishment. Did he once have a real job, or was that just a distant dream smothered by the dense haze of opium? Perhaps he used to be a magistrate sitting behind a grand desk debating the merits of law and order. Now, however, he merely seems to oversee revellers destined for blissful oblivion. With a slight bow, he offers you the dubious honour of choosing your spot on one of the extravagantly embroidered cushions, a decision that seems as significant as selecting a life partner in this twilight realm. As you sink into a well-worn patch of velvet, you observe the eclectic furnishings around you, the opium pipes glinting like trophies, hanging tapestries adorned with scenes of whimsical cats and merrymaking fairies, and an assortment of assorted curios that may or may not defy natural law. A flying fish? Yes, they have that. Why not throw in a glass jar labelled mystery goo? A fine addition to any den, if you ask me. This is the kind of place where nothing is quite what it seems, and even the reality feels like it's been blurred by a fog machine. The host ambles over, adjusting his plaid vest with the flair of someone who believes they're the star of a theatrical performance, and you find yourself smirking, unsure how much of this scene feels real. He leans in close, almost conspiratorial, and asks if you're a first-timer. A glassy-eyed nod probably conveys all the enthusiasm of an eager puppy meeting a stranger, and he grins as if he's just been entrusted with the world's most sacred secret. "In that case," he rasps with dramatic twinkle, "welcome to a universe where the line between dreams and delusions dance like drunken fairies." And just like that, you're part of an exclusive club that may require a multi-year membership to be granted full access to adventure, or enough funds to keep the novelty of your visits shining bright. He steers you toward the bar area, which resembles a pigsty filled with gold-tinged trinkets, half-finished scrolls, and a plethora of small jars that would put a spice merchant to shame. "It's artisanal opium," he announces, as if this were a tasting at a high-end wine bar. "We have flavours from the finest sources, Malaya, Persia, and, believe it or not, some of this is local." He eyes the jar as if it might hold the twinkle of a naughty fairy who just might make all of this worth it. "Is it vegan?" you ask, lightly, half joking. He weighs the question, but probably decides it's best not to engage in any dietary debates before an opium session. Instead, he nods solemnly and pours a small dose into a pipe, demonstrating with the precision of a circus performer. "Now breathe deeply," he instructs you, "but not too deeply. We want to float above the clouds, not swim with the fish." At this point, you can't help but wonder how many of his patrons have sought refuge from the world outside these smoke-choked walls. Perhaps they were once high-flying nobles, too proud to quench their thirst for fancy wines, and instead diving headfirst into the rabbit hole of ecstasy. In the dim light, their laughter mingles with the tendrils of smoke curling lazily upwards, like invitations to join a higher realm, one steeped in ancient mysteries. As you grab the offered pipe, you glimmer in anticipation of that first taste of nothingness. Should you take a moment to negotiate your existence while in this opulent haze, or would such deliberation only lead you down a path of unfulfilled regrets? Sinking into that fluffy abundance, you succumb once more, this time to the seductive call of the one-eyed security guard of dreams, the so-called proprietor promising a tale worth telling tomorrow if you manage to remember half of it today. And as you finally inhale, with just enough uncertainty coaxing you onward, one question becomes breathtakingly clear. Who truly runs this opium den? Is it the enigmatic host, or perhaps the very act of partaking in opium that begins to weave its tapestry, wrapping everyone in the inescapable thrill of adventure, laughter, and, the most comforting development of all, complete oblivion? The menu is not exactly what you'd expect at a fine dining establishment. Instead of chicken or fish, you find enticing terms like sublime black opium and dreamy laudanum. You briefly ponder whether you should ask if they have any gluten-free options, only to quickly realise that might just get you kicked out. After all, who needs dietary restrictions when you're about to experience an altered state of being? As the dim light flickers overhead, you realise this choice is far more critical than deciding whether or not to have dessert at a fancy restaurant. What you order could quite literally shape your perception of reality. With an air of profundity, you peruse the list. Sublime black opium catches your eye first, a poetic phrase that drips with promise. It sounds heavenly enough to serve as the title for a Victorian sonnet, perhaps one about a dapper gentleman who fancied himself a poet, only to find that words evaded him as effectively as his last companion at the opium pipe. Slightly hypnotised by the description, you can almost feel the soft caress of dreams waiting just beyond the curtain of consciousness, ready to sweep you away into astral planes filled with twinkling stars and floating dolphins. Yet reality calls you back, reminding you that such euphoric expectations might come at a price. Should you splurge on the dreamy laudanum, the enticing concoction known to comfort anxieties and soothe the soul, it's like a warm embrace after a long day, assuring you that life's little inconveniences can just vanish in a haze of calm. But, oh, the irony. With each puff that floats through the air, you feel your inhibitions slip away. You question if the comfort is worth the potential plunge down a purple rabbit hole, spinning wildly out of control. As you sit in the plush confines of your chosen corner, one that gives you a prime view of both patrons and the opium menu, you begin to notice tiny details. The woman to your left is draped elegantly across a velvet cushion, her fingers lingering delicately on a pipe while she gazes at the ceiling as if her thoughts are taking flight among imaginary clouds. What would it be like to float there with her, free from the burden of time? You figure that's the charm of the den. It encourages wild daydreaming where reality blurs and possibilities multiply like rabbits in spring. Then you spot a gentleman nearby, his thin moustache quivering as he spins tales of the wonders he's experienced while high on his favourite concoction. Your ears perk up, eager and curious. He speaks as if he's been an interstellar traveller, recounting adventures through existential conundrums that sound both absurd and delightfully plausible after a few hits off the pipe. "I once danced with wisdom," he declares dramatically, "and it looked shockingly similar to a badly dressed chicken." The laugh that erupts from your throat surprises you, because in here, nothing feels more profound than laughter tinged with shared absurdity. As the host looms nearby, his brows knitted with patience, your eyes scan back to the menu for further indulgence. How about a little opium-infused chocolate? Better bring back a little sweetness before you trip into a void of ponderings and confessions. Knowing how rich layers of flavour intertwine with smoky goodness makes you excited, thinking about how chocolate and opium might unite, creating a confection that'll elevate your experience to new heights. Soon enough, your choices are made, and the alluring aromas intermingle in the air, creating an intoxicating atmosphere. As you sip your concoction, warmth spreads through you, taking the edge off the complexity of existence. And suddenly the world feels forgiving, an open book begging you to scribble delightful nonsense. You begin to converse, tentatively at first, then gaining confidence as the ebb and flow of engaging discussions draw you in like a moth to a whimsical flame. As your senses ignite, words tumble effortlessly, ideas sparking and mingling like fireflies in the night. Opinions blend, laughter rings out, and stories flow, each twisting into intricate and animated tales. In this surreal setting, you feel empowered to explore every aspect of your imagination, liberated and enchanted. However, your thoughts shyly drift back to the menu, where a lingering mystery remains. Just how does one fully return to the mundane world after sharing such ethereal joys? Would you carry the memory of this experience like an artful ribbon, intertwined with the waves of time? Would it ever serve as a guiding light upon finding your way back home? So there you sit, cocooned in padded opulence, shrouded in mystery, thread by thread stitching together memories of a whimsical encounters and transformative choices while on the opium-laden menu of dreams. With each moment passing, you understand how deeply intertwined sentiment, creativity, and the intoxicating lure of art inherently are. Each puff of smoke seems to shimmer with stories, all waiting for you to breathe them in. As you sink into the pillows, they envelop you like a half-remembered dream. The perfect plushness creates a snug oasis, one you could easily mistake for a cloud, if it didn't smell faintly of every bad decision you've ever made. You nestle in comfortably, wondering if anyone ever died in these soft marshmallowy depths. But that's an entirely different story, relevant only if you plan to live your next life as a cautionary tale. As you settle in, a sense of relaxation washes over you like a warm wave. one that gently pulls you under while convincing you that the real world can wait outside for a bit longer. The room's dim light flickers, casting long shadows that feel like sympathetic companions. The faint sounds of laughter and hushed conversations swirl around, adding to the atmosphere of contented chaos. To your left, a man leans back, his delicate pipe releasing seductive tendrils of smoke that spiral toward the ceiling. You can't help but envy his calm. There's something almost ethereal about watching the smoke dance, like gazing into a divination of future choices wrapped in narcotic daydreams. If only you could capture that carefree attitude and apply it to your life outside. Unfortunately, responsibilities and bills still exist, and they are usually less forgiving than the delightful den you find yourself in tonight. Deep within the cozy embrace of the cushions, you start thinking about the strangers around you. Here, identities blend together, fueled by shared experience. It dawns on you that perhaps they too are seeking refuge from their realities. You glance at the curly-haired woman clad in a bohemian dress, her body swaying ever so slightly to an unheard rhythm. Was she a painter, a poet, or simply a spirit lost amidst the clouds? You have to admit, this place has a knack for cultivating curiosity and wonder, akin to a modern-day circus of oddities, where those within can enter and exit transformed, if only temporarily. Ah, yes, transformation. The very concept pulls you deeper into your makeshift cocoon. The combination of its plushness and the gentle high of opium beginning to unravel your thoughts like a well-loved storybook left unread for too long. You absently wonder, are you here for a reset or merely to escape another round of chores? It's almost dizzying how easily you forget about the laundromat waiting with piles of wrinkled garments begging for your attention. In this vibrant den of inauthentic delights, minutiae are utterly disposable, easily exchanged for the fleeting connections you have embarked upon in the space of mere hours. Yet, inside this indulgent haven, there is an unspoken understanding. Shared vulnerability rests like a soft whisper, beckoning those beneath the velvety blankets to confide their buried secrets and dreams, especially when different shades of inebriation make perfect companions. A blurry-eyed gentleman nearby is passionately gesturing about how the universe might just be a giant game of interstellar chess. You could roll your eyes at the absurdity of it all or engage in the conversation, turning it into an extraordinary moment. After all, wasn't this why you came to this hidden pocket of life? Still lounging in your cloud of cushions, you gently tap into the soothing atmosphere, letting the waves wash over you like a fragile tide. The surreal conversations rising and falling echo the ebb and flow of topics you could never predict. Sort of like a Victorian episode of Whose Line Is It Anyway? You find yourself chuckling as you imagine an impromptu game emerging, where each answer is more inconceivable than the last. Your suspension from reality gives rise to a sense of acceptance, as if a marvellous synergy is happening, one born of shared comfort and the saccharine smoke that hangs heavy in the air. With each moment passing, the blend of camaraderie and forgetfulness strengthens your resolve to remain nestled deeper into this sanctuary. Why wouldn't you want to linger a bit longer? Outside, the world sprawls on, relentlessly demanding your best self. Yet here lies an invitation to explore, to dream a little bigger, to skewer the mundane with reckless abandon. Who knows? Maybe this time your soul isn't merely escaping for the sake of respite, but embarking on a journey towards self-discovery nestled within the embrace of these oddly plush pillows. So you let every flicker of uncertainty slip away and allow the dampness of your reality to fade in the face of laughter, connection, and a steaming cup of whatever fanciful concoction awaits you. Together, in this transient swirl of eccentricities, you find comfort, delight, and a cosy sense of belonging. Maybe you'll leave this den with a spring in your step and a few more tales woven through clouds of blissful opium enjoyment. Or perhaps, just perhaps, you'll find something deeper within, hidden amidst the layers, waiting to unfurl back into the light, transformed and ready to take on the world with new vigour. It's time for the main event. You grab the opium pipe, only to realise that sharing one of these is about as socially exclusive as sharing a toothbrush. You inhale, and suddenly the room feels like it's painted with watercolours, the air thick with colourful dreams swirling around like a modern art exhibition gone wrong. Clusters of giggles, thoughts twirling, all while you struggle to remember how you got your eyebrows that high. As the smoky haze thickens, your surroundings morph into swirls of dreamy distortion. You half expect Salvador Dali to pop out of the folds and offer you a snack made of pure whimsy. The laughter around you bubbles with absurdity, punctuated by the comedic timing of tipsy souls trying to navigate conversations that have begun to slip into the nonsensical. Do you join in? Of course. But the whimsical prompt you just heard sounds like a Kafkaesque riddle, mixed with a bit of gossip about the cat that thinks it's a dog down the street. Perhaps this is the moment you've been waiting for, a chance to engage in profound yet completely pointless dialogues about the very meaning of existence, or the even stickier question of whether people are more like cats or dogs, and why that matters in the grand scheme of things. As your thoughts float on their own, you become acutely aware of your senses. The air is sweet and heavy, like an overly sentimental love letter from somebody you haven't seen in ages. What is this mix of sweetness and mustiness? Is it the remnants of unwashed cushions, or merely the essence of forgotten dreams lingering in the corners? All of it serves as a gorgeous backdrop for the chaos unfolding around you. A flurry of conversations fills your ears, each drifting in and out like the smoke itself. Someone whispers about a recent scandal involving a local nobleman, famed for his fashion but not so much for his grasp on reality, who may or may not have tried to serenade a statue in the square. The laughter is contagious, melding with your inner monologue, and suddenly you're questioning if you've ever genuinely inhabited reality, or merely been an understudy in a grand performance of life, complete with wayward squirrels and awkward silences. But then, someone clears their throat dramatically, and for a moment, silence takes hold. Your eyes dart around, almost expecting a spotlight to shine down on what seems to be an impending soliloquy. "Ladies and gentlemen," proclaims the speaker, who looks like they've time-travelled from a Shakespearean play long forgotten. What is the essence of our existence if not to seek bliss amid the chaos? A rousing cheer erupts, temporarily drowning out the scent of opium filling your nostrils as you wonder if reality will ever actually win out tonight. You take another puff, and the colours become even more vivid. The laughter turns into music, and your worries float away again on phosphorescent clouds. There's an existential warmth washing over. You, like warm soup made of not only chicken, but possibly every comforting thing you've ever known. Everyone begins speaking in riddles and rhymes, as though they've all agreed to spontaneously become characters in a Victorian musical. A diabolical plot most cruel, made captivating by one opium-fueled rhapsody after another. But let's not forget the eerie undercurrent swelling in the background. You can feel the buzz in your bones. This is also a place of escape for people who might just be running from more than the rain outside or the mundanity of the daily grind. They're also running from realities far darker than you could dream. A fleeting thought nudges your conscience. How many souls have come to this whimsical paradise seeking solace, only to lose themselves in the haze? You try to shake it off as a mere passing cloud. Why dwell on despair when you can muse about the philosophical implications of a world where squirrels host their own reality shows? Before you know it, you're lost in thought, wrapped in a cocoon of bliss, and yet aware that the clock hasn't stopped ticking. Somewhere in the spheres of possibility, your sobriety nudges at you, a faded memory of reality you're reluctant to face. Guilt feels like a long-lost acquaintance crashing the party, but the warmth enveloping you resists letting go. You lean further into the cushion, letting the world slowly unfurl like a wilting flower craving light. For tonight, in this whimsical den of surreal escape, there are no deadlines, no obligations, just the inimitable illusion of eternity. With one last, deeply satisfying puff, you realize the intoxicating blend of dreams, colors, and creative chaos has become a part of you, leaving an indelible mark that will linger long after the night fades. As the masses around you continue to sip from the fountain of levity, you merge into the thoughts of the room, existing in a paradox of clarity and confusion. And as you chuckle to yourself, you ponder this moment. In a world of fleeting realities, your soul has been painted in new hues, forever altered by the experiences shared within these walls, a cosmic ride you never truly want to end. Look around. It's a motley crew. There's a poet complaining about the lack of metaphors in the atmosphere, an artist trying to make sense of an abstract dance, and a well-dressed gentleman whose laugh sounds like a cross between a hyena and a particularly contented seal, proving yet again that opium brings out the best, or worst, in human behaviour. Will you join the conversation about romanticism, or will you find yourself blissfully lost in the absurdity of it all? The poet, with a flourish usually reserved for the likes of Shakespeare, though he resembles more of disgruntled parrot, is gesturing wildly with a paintbrush. Truly, who doesn't love a good rant about existentialism while clutching a half-empty glass of grog? He insists that the universe is simply an ill-timed joke, played by some cosmic stand-up comedian who forgot to write punchlines. With every exaggerated hand movement, you can't help but wonder if he might just be auditioning for a role in Greatest Delusions of Our Time. Newsflash. He is. You'll have to take his rants with a grain of salt, but his wildly vivid imagery is somewhat contagious. Who knew that opium-induced lunacy could also kickstart a vivid imagination? Next, meet the artist. A woman draped in layers of flowing fabrics that seem to beg the question. Did she dress to express herself, or merely to become a walking tapestry? She's deep in an interpretive dance with a nearby candle, moving in ways you can't quite decipher. The flickering flame is clearly amused, but perhaps a bit worried she might mistake it for a man and decide to woo it. You catch her concentrating with the kind of intensity reserved for those about to win a staring contest. As you watch, you can't help but think she's single-handedly bringing back the spirit of the Renaissance, albeit one pirouette at a time, dangerously close to lighting her hair on fire. But in this setting, fear is a distant cousin. Her laughter melds with the air, and happiness is everything you're all bound to try. Seated next to her is the well-dressed gentleman, whom you suspect was once an extra in the latest Victorian thriller film but somehow wound up here instead. His laugh is a raucous affair, echoing against the velvet-lined walls, a noise so absurdly joyous that it could cause a revolt among the serious folks of the den. He spins tales of grandeur, inevitably infusing each anecdote with delightful absurdity. "You know," he bellows, "I once went to a dinner party where the roast goose tried to escape." It's hard to tell whether he's simply spinning a whimsical yarn or if he genuinely believes that the poultry uprising was a coordinated effort from the local farmers. Either way, his infectious enthusiasm is hard to ignore, even if you find yourself raising an eyebrow at the entire fowl situation. But there's more. The table to the left boasts a group of philosophers who appear deeply engrossed in a debate about the meaning of life. One believes it's all about the pursuit of happiness, while another insists everything is predetermined by the universe. Suddenly a nearby cat, yes, a cat, decides it is the perfect moment for a dramatic entrance, leaping onto the table and knocking over the philosopher's drinks in a cascade of beer and existential dread. The ensuing chaos doesn't just provoke laughter, but also offers a profound display of absurdity. Perhaps chaos is the truest form of joy after all. Glancing around, you spot a pair of women cloaked in scarves, giggling about something as private as an intimate secret. They share knowing smiles, their delicate fingers mimicking a quick game of charades, while giggling about splendidly unruly romances and misunderstood sentiments. You wonder, is there anything better than fleeting camaraderie sprinkled with a bit of mystery? Or maybe this is how they cope with the lingering effects of opium, because what better way to enjoy a dreamy night than to stir up some plots worthy of a novel? As laughter and vibrant discussions whirl around, you find yourself grinning, caught in the infectious mood of these eccentric companions. Are they betraying harsh realities with their whimsical banter? Or perhaps reminding you that life, much like a haze of opium smoke, is defined by the colours you choose to paint it. One joke, one dance, one absurd conversation at a time. You can't resist joining in, concocting your own absurd anecdotes, and letting humour bridge the gaps between dreams and reality. Why not lean into the can-cans and chaos, and celebrate the joyous absurdity lurking in every whispered conversation? In the midst of this delightful madness, the harsh realities of the outside world feel a universe away. Life may hand you the same old boring script day in and day out, but here, in this quirky little den, you can rewrite your role into something delightful and whimsically absurd. As you breathe in the thick air infused with dreams and laughter, you silently pledge to embrace your own eccentricity. Who knows? You just might find your own hidden talents twinkling in the kaleidoscope of night. Surprise. Now you're being sheepishly pulled into a game of let's discuss our feelings. Wine is involved, maybe unhealthy doses of it. Your fellow patrons are sharing intense confessions about their dreams of flying or existential crises. You laugh, slightly scared, but then, who needs bungee jumping when you can leap into the chasms of the human psyche? Though you'd advise wearing a helmet if you plan to dive deep. You sit at the round table, feeling a warm wave of camaraderie wash over you, fueled by the opiate haze and the intoxicating connections formed in this whimsical, swirling chaos. As the debate intensifies, a whimsical gent with a moustache that seems to have taken on a life of its own begins to wax poetic about the time he convinced a flock of pigeons to join him in synchronized dances on the street corner. I told them it was either that or pigeon boxing, he insists, punctuating his statement with a slight wiggle of his fingers, as if to mimic the flapping wings. You can't help but gasp at the absurdity. Is this man an eccentric savant or just completely off his rocker? What's the difference at this point? The conversation meanders like the smoke curling upward, weaving in elaborate tales about theatrical adventures and philosophical musings. Is it better to be a heroic figure in the eternal struggle against monotony, or merely a humble servant in the great theatre of life, someone pontificates? You wonder if they've actually had any major roles, or if all this philosophizing is rooted in the leftovers of last night's lamb stew. But that's the beauty of opium dens, isn't it? Existential dilemmas come served alongside a side of drug-induced awareness and mild confusion, spiced with laughter and often a hint of delirium. And then, without warning, someone proposes a new drinking game. It's called Truth or Dare, but mostly Truth. A madcap cheer rises from the group as one brave soul throws a glass down like they're starting a high-stakes poker game. You exchange slightly anxious glances with the gentleman who smells like a combination of mothballs and wistful regret. He furrows his brow and mumbles something about flights of fancy, while the woman beside you cackles like a hen, letting you know she once dared a complete stranger to tattoo a flamingo on their forearm. There's exhilarating madness buzzing in the air, a cocktail of distrust and warmth, mischief and delight. The rules of this new game feel liberally ludicrous. Share your deepest fears, confess secret ambitions, paired with the added thrill of tossing in a voice that sounds remarkably like a grouchy elderly wizard for effect. Someone mentions their crippling dread of speaking to parrots, claiming, "How can you ever know what those feathery gossips say about you when you're not looking?" You snort in laughter, shifting from existential dread to an image of parrots plotting your demise. Meanwhile, the host encourages participation, pouring more wine into glasses as if it's a sacred elixir, immediately dubbing the group the Spooky Sensibility Society. You chuckle at the name and realise that it's more than coincidental. There is something eerie yet fantastical happening in this den, as if the very fabric of the universe varies depending on the frequency of laughter and the opening of the heart. "Okay, enough about fears," the moustache man declares. "Let's talk aspirations. I aspire to be an excellent impressionist painter." You lean in closer, genuinely intrigued, until he adds, "And I want to paint all of you." The unfiltered laughter erupts again, and the group suddenly resembles a bevy of merriment, as you realise that why not be immortalised in wacky art while you're lost in opium? Just as the games reach a fever pitch, fueled by youthful exuberance and thick fog, someone daringly proposes one final challenge. A dance-off to the sound of a song played on the stillness of fog. The music? The haunting strums of a makeshift band played on jugs and spoons, courtesy of one of the patrons who performs while maintaining an air of mysterious authority. Clumsy joint movements and awkward boogies ensue. Laughter bursts uncontrollably, as manoeuvres just outside of rhythm create accidental chaos worthy of a Shakespearean play. This is your moment of liberation from worldly weight. But as the laughter powder drifts over the parlour games, the reality of the outside world creeps in, occasionally reminding you of the dangers of leaving your soul at the mercy of too many whims and not enough grounding. Shrieks of laughter and cries for more wine create a symphony intertwined with the whispers of existential fears. And as the dance-off climaxes, you realise that perhaps the whimsical games, with their embrace of words and laughter, are the very reason one settles into an opium den in the first place. It's not just about escaping reality, but exploring the wild areas of your imagination, allowing the absurd to reframe your mundane life, reminding you through playful absurdity of life's intricate beauty one laugh at a time. In this haven of whimsical nonsense, truth is not only accepted, it is celebrated, propping the fragile notion of existence back up, one glass of wine at a time. A musician appears, a stark difference from the otherwise sedate atmosphere. With a handmade instrument that resembles a cross between a one-string guitar and a loopy magic wand, he begins strumming out tunes reminiscent of yesteryears, balancing between uplifting and profoundly melancholic. You're no longer just a patron. Now you're part of a live soundtrack that could score a movie about a sloth looking for enlightenment. The notes waft through the air like the recent opium smoke, swirling softly around you, inviting you to float along. It feels like you're wandering through time, each chord transporting you through moments of laughter, heartbreak, and tipsy debates over who really invented the croissant. Clue: it was definitely not the French. As the melodies deepen, patrons start swaying in their cushy corners, their heads bobbing like overly enthusiastic bobbleheads. The musician seems entranced by the atmosphere too, channeling everything from pastoral bliss to existential dread through his strings. Time feels irrelevant here. You've transitioned into a dreamscape where minutes stretch like taffy as the music plays on, echoing the inner workings of souls around you. People share knowing glances, and for a moment, everyone seems united in this orchestral reverie. Strangers become friends, and whispers of philosophy bubble up like the effervescent taste of well-aged champagne. But then the musician strikes a low note, forcing you back into an emotional whirlpool deeper than the last regrettable decision you made on a Friday night. As the chords morph into a somber tune that could make a cat weep, the mood shifts faster than a Victorian lady with a bout of the vapours. You find yourself pondering life's complexities. Do you actually know why you came here? Was it a longing for connection or the thrill of escapism? Did you secretly just want to forget that one embarrassing moment at the pub where you slipped on someone's rogue pretzel? The questions pile up like abandoned dreams in the corners of the room. Then, in a burst of inspiration, the musician picks up the tempo and starts strumming that frantic beat like he's being chased by a pack of hungry squirrels. You notice people are snapping back to life, propelled into spontaneous dancing. It's all arms and legs flailing, a group of revellers embracing the absurdity of it all, as if they're just about to win the silliest dance-off in history award. Suddenly your foot starts tapping in sync with the chaotic rhythm, as your depleted courage returns to play, and you contemplate losing all sense of self-consciousness. Why not? You're in an opium den, where reality bends like a spoilt noodle in the hands of a distracted chef. The harmony swells, enveloping you like a warm hug from an unexpected friend after a particularly awkward date. Laughter rises, a cascade of giggles, and you realise the music acts as a catalyst for human connection, a magical potion that transcends the mundane. You watch as the shy artist you noticed in the corner uncontrollably shimmies while exchanging gleeful banter with a hardened philosopher who just moments ago seemed stricken with apathy. It's enough to get anyone soft-hearted and slightly misty-eyed, or maybe that's just the opium speaking. Moments blur, and you lose yourself in this kaleidoscope of sound and sensation. You toy with the idea that the musician isn't just pouring out notes, but weaving together a tapestry of shared human experience. From heartbreak to unexpected joy, each strum a thread binding everyone present. Suddenly, a piercing memory slaps you across the face, something from your own past, a faint echo of a distant lullaby sung to you by that grandmother. A wave of nostalgia hits you, resonating with the melancholy note the musician just hit, lacing together eras and emotions while illuminating the corridors of your mind. As the last chord resonates, reverberating harmoniously through the dim room, you feel a collective sigh emerge from the patrons, a sentimental farewell to a fleeting moment of shared joy. Everyone exchanges knowing smiles, a silent understanding passing between you all. For a brief interlude, realities faded, the world outside evaporated, and you were simply human. In a world dominated by chaos and overwhelming dread, you caught a glimpse of magic, all from the mini-opera unfolding before you. If nothing else, you've experienced a truth in this opium den that stretches beyond the days of soot and smoke. Music isn't just an escape, it's an echo of life itself, a reflection, a connection, and a reminder that amidst the clouds there exists a universe of emotions waiting, ready to be shared. And as you pull yourself back to the present, you carry that as a treasure, knowing you've tapped into something deeper, richer than pure escapism, something wonderfully and rhythmically human. As the haze thickens, the discussions deepen, teetering on the edge of profound and downright ridiculous. Someone proposes a debate about whether cats perceive time differently than humans, an argument that could only be waxed philosophical over opium as others gather around like moths to a flame. You suddenly question if anyone's ever given a cat its due credit for all the universe's inconclusiveness. After all, every cat you've ever met seems to possess an uncanny ability to stretch a minute into an eternity, all while reclining majestically, like tiny furry overlords who simply can't be bothered with the concept of time or the constraints of reality. As this cat-centric discourse evolves, you find yourself reflecting on how time itself is an illusion, a mere construct built upon the fragile art of conversation. One of your fellow patrons, an aspiring poet whose thoughts cascade forth in an almost unbearable torrent, claims that time is simply a fabric woven by the threads of shared experiences, because obviously everything sounds deeper when shrouded in opium vapour. You can't help but nod appreciatively, realising they might have accidentally stumbled upon the essence of every awkward family gathering. Let's just ignore the screaming children and drink another round. And then, like the inevitable appearance of an unsolicited relative at that gathering, someone else emerges with a bold statement. What if time is just what happens when we forget to be present? It hangs in the air like mist, weighted down with that delightful dose of absurdity only possible in a space steeped in smoke. The challenging insights hit you like a warm cup of tea, but with far less assurance that your mind is intact. It's a fair bet the last thing you'd want at this moment is any reminder that you left the stove on at home, assuming there was even a stove to begin with. Suddenly, amidst the laughter and philosophical ramblings floating through the aromatic haze, the topic shifts to whether or not one of the patrons thinks it's valid to wear a top hat while discussing the meaning of existential dread. The hat wearer, who is mysteriously and quite conveniently sporting not just any top hat but a sequined one, blinks slowly, the glitter sparkling as if echoing the auditory motions of crickets chirping in unison with the absurdity around them. This leads to a vibrant debate revolving around: are we surprised that the oppressed come to the table with sequins? Followed by someone muttering something about how sequins symbolise life's futile attempts to add sparkle to the mundane. A quip that brings more laughter. Laughter morphs into contemplation and spirals back to cats, as someone queries, if a cat were to time travel, would it arrive at its destination in perfect fur condition, or would it instantly become a rabbit? The thought sends the room into roaring giggles, fueled by unfurling smoke and playful minds. Someone bursts forth with unsolicited theories about what a time-travelling cat could accomplish, maybe robbing a bank in the 1930s or preventing the invention of socks altogether, thereby reducing the world's fashion faux pas. Ah, timeless wisdom wrapped up in the fur of conspiracy. As jokes grow as dense as the atmosphere, there's a sense that everyone is teetering on the edge of shared truths that lie just beneath the surface of surreal commentary. What if our lives are akin to a string of beautiful dreams wrapped in sticky notes of regret and really awkward moments, someone muses, eyes glistening with reflections of the candlelight, casting flickering shadows reminiscent of the Great Gatsby's parties, but with far fewer real musicians, and more people serenading lost hopes under the influence of a good pipe. Moments pass within moments, and the conversations float lazily like autumn leaves, dancing through the air, some profound, others outlandishly absurd. As you listen, a part of you wishes to etch this experience onto parchment, forever captured in its bizarre, ephemeral beauty, as if the very act of writing could solidify the fleeting magic of opium-induced banter. But perhaps the key takeaway of the evening is this: life itself is a magnificent tapestry, woven from laughter, philosophical musings, and transitory nonsense. Before you know it, someone proposes an impromptu toast, to the cats of the world as thought leaders, the true custodians of time and philosophical quandaries obscured by our busy human lives. The glasses clink amidst fits of laughter, the shared absurdity binding together the strange cast of characters in this opium den, reminding you that beneath smoke and shimmer lie the rich threads of human connection and the wondrous levity that comes when one dares to embrace the absurd. It's astounding how quickly feelings spiral out of control on this wild opium roller coaster. One moment, you're caught in fits of laughter over a terrible pun, which sounds spectacular after all the smoke, and the next, you're brooding, pondering life's meaningless fabric softly woven with existential dread. You begin to wonder, can euphoria and despair coexist? Can joy sprout from sorrow? Or, in true Victorian fashion, should you just sip a cup of tea and pretend none of this is happening? As the haze thickens around you, laughter turns into a delightful cacophony that bounces off the velvet drapes, and the heavy aroma of poppy wafts in, wrapping its arms around your senses like an overly affectionate uncle. You roll between fits of mirth and existential musing, questioning life's purpose as patrons nearby escalate their conversations into Shakespearean sonnets of outrageous nonsense. To opium or not to opium, that is the question, one overly dramatic figure proclaims, as if standing on a stage that only exists in their mind. With each passing moment, you find that your laughter mingles freely with the sombre reflections of the others as they wax poetic about the miseries of life. You silently applaud the delicate balance of emotions, the way sorrow nestles up to joy like a reluctant couple at a party who keep inadvertently bumping into each other. So, what if one man frets about his future as a morbid poet destined to write his magnum opus on a used napkin, while simultaneously recounting a decidedly misguided romance involving his pet hedgehog? It strangely makes sense here. Far better than trying to convince yourself that you enjoy polishing your correspondence letters under the watchful eye of fate, or something equally dire that Victorian society imposes. And there you are, allowing absurdity to chisel away your apprehensions one giggle at a time. Perhaps there's latent wisdom found in mania after all. In this dimly lit den that feels like an art piece come to life, emotions dance like flames around a flickering candle, relishing in its frailty. You might picture your current emotional spectrum as a wild painting splashed across a canvas, a riot of yellows and blacks clashing in a mesmerizing balletic display. Who knew anxiety could swing so gracefully? The opium is a catalyst. It unstrings the heart, sifting through joy, grief, laughter, and loss, creating a potpourri of profundity that tickles your palate like a vintage cheese platter gone rogue in a lavish banquet hall. A nearby table erupts in a debate about the merits of existentialism versus absurdism. Careful thought, fella, you're walking on thin philosophical ice. The passionate advocates throw around grand expressions and metaphors enough to send ripples through the haze. You lean in closer, desperately trying to catch every word, as if they might vanish upon the first inhale on the next pipe. It's mesmerizing how life intertwines, how an opium den isn't merely a gathering of lost souls, but a gathering of souls daring to dream louder. Even in moments of melancholy, when mortality slips through your fingers like grains of sand, you are comforted by a profound realization. You're all in this absurd circus together, spinning in cycles of joy and pain. Every time someone bellows out a euphoric huzzah for a particularly profound and pointless proclamation, it stirs the room, launches 1,000 butterflies into a swarming frenzy. Feelings collide, and collide some more. You gasp for air amidst the harmony of each crescendo, deeply aware that here in the opium haze there are no pretenses. You're stripped bare of your social identity and existential labels. just another romantic willing to share a laugh over the whims of fate. As the evening wears on, the emotional landscape ebbs like the tide, washing ashore moments both light and heavy. Just when you think you're on the verge of return to reality, someone might start to croon a nostalgic tune about lost love or longing that pulls every fragile heartstring in the room, like a master puppeteer conjuring bittersweet notes from thin air. All you can do is surrender to this swirling mix of joy and sorrow, craving more as the light blurs, the laughter weaves a web, and the emotions become luminous constellations twinkling across this otherwise inky void. And as you nestle deeper into those sumptuous cushions, realizing your heart is both cockeyed and overflowing with affection for these whimsical characters who are just as troubled yet joyful as you are, you realize it's all part of the grand spectacle of life. Embrace the joys, endure the sorrows, and let laughter be the universal language that paints on an unmade canvas in the shadows of Victorian opium dens, where each experience binds you closer to the art of existence itself. Ah, the drifters, those figures forever intertwined with the walls of this den, part-time philosophers, part-time ghosts, smoothly blending into the wallpaper with tales stretching further than their own lifetimes. They glide around, wispy and ethereal like the smell of incense, reminding you that the lines between life and otherworldly drudgery are as thin as the opium smoke swirling overhead. You can't help but wonder if they're here by choice, or just a touch of bad luck that deposited them in a world where time means nothing and repetition is a fancy sport. These drifters seem so appropriately out of place, yet perfectly at home, like the bewildered cat that wanders into a fancy dinner party. Still, every glance indicates that these unanchored souls possess a wealth of unsung experiences, each more absurd than the last. You observe a fellow patron lolling on a plush cushion, a twinkle in their half-closed eyes as they recite poetry that feels like a concoction of lost dreams and existential dread. Their words tangle with the heavier silences, infused with the sweetness of nostalgia and just the slightest hint of regret, like cotton candy, if cotton candy were spun from the gossamer threads of long-lost aspirations. Their stories wrap around you like a warm but slightly unsettling blanket. One moment, they're reminiscing about the time they almost had a glorious career in stage acting, debating whether the universe is conspiring against them, or if they were simply cursed with a talent for delivering lines with the grace of a staggering toddler. You chuckle to yourself, thinking, who needs to dread Monday mornings when you have the perpetual shadows of past lives hanging behind you like a shabby curtain? As you surrender to the whimsicality of the scene, a particular drifter catches your eye. A whimsical character wearing a tattered bowler hat that seems to have taken on a life of its own. His beard flows like a cascade of whispers, both mysterious and slightly alarming, making you wonder if it could speak if properly prompted. He opens his mouth and launches into a story about how he used to swear that he could hear the Eiffel Tower breathe. Yes, you heard him right. He swore he could hear it sigh in delight when it rained, as though the weather itself were in on the joke of life, revelling in its own whimsical power. Curiously, you lean in, captivated but also bemused. After all, what does it mean to find meaning in buildings? As he spins a tale that turns a simple lawn chair into a critical debate about the societal constructs around architecture, you're half convinced that only in an opium haze could such a convoluted connection seem plausible. Perhaps the tower, in its majestic stillness, became a stand-in for lamentations that weighed upon his heart, or served as a proxy for his own deeply unfulfilled dreams. In this bizarre bubble of intrigue, the frivolities of everyday existence seem light years away. Conversations flow into thought-provoking territory with tangents that lead nowhere, yet everywhere, making you question when now actually began. Could these drifters be the guardians of lost stories, content to trade their true identities for a sip of opium-laced oblivion while basking in semi-lucid reveries? You see them sharing whispered secrets, expressions veiled and hesitant like they're navigating a minefield of memories. Not everyone escapes with their sanity intact, you might suspect. As you reflect on your own role within this hazy tapestry, a laugh erupts from the group by your side as they concoct an elaborate scheme to free their local neighbourhood cat from the insidious grasp of the patrolling pigeons. It's absurd, bordering on madness, yet you cannot deny the charm of their conviction. This is perhaps the greatest humour of the drifters, the blending of the ridiculous with the profound, an art form perfected amidst laughter and dreams are simmering in sweet oblivion. Soon, the opium begins to envelop your mind, and you realise how these drifters live beyond time and space, a curious slice of humanity pressing pause on reality while seeking solace within the comfort of their cerebral haze. Their laughter may hide the sorrow of lives lived in shadows, but here, amid the smoke, sadness takes a subtle back seat to the celebration of quirks, mishaps, and outright passions. The weight of life's burdens somehow feels lighter, almost exhilarating. So, as you gather your thoughts and sway in time with the drifters, you sense that perhaps this is what it means to exist outside the mundane, to pause and savour both the bright and shadowy shades of existence, brushing them with laughter, unfiltered and pure. Here, love and loss swirl together, creating an elixir of existence that begs to be experienced at least once, even if just to blur the lines of reality a little longer. So how does one escape a Victorian opium den, you ask? It's simple. Once the smoke clears and the sun rises, you find yourself blinking in confusion, your brain feeling like a vacuum cleaner on the fritz. The memories swirl, almost like a dream, and you must piece together your night. Or maybe you'll simply let imagination create its own narrative. After all, who needs accuracy? With each passing moment, you feel a jolt of realization that your once hazy surroundings have transformed into the mundane echoes of morning. A ruffling curtain barely blocking out the sun's resolute beams, starkly contrasting the glimmer of opium dreams. As your senses slowly awaken, you're greeted by the distinctive aroma of burnt toast wafting through the air, a far cry from the sweet scent of opium smoke that left you floating the night before. You find yourself in a modest room strewn with illustrations of bygone eras, curiosities and oddities that seem to mock your ill-fated descent into relaxation. Who decided that keeping a porcelain cat collection would be charming? It's shocking how a cat's disdainful gaze can suddenly feel more judgmental than it did last night. Fantasies of lavish, opium-laden desserts quickly melt under the harsh light of reality, replaced by the unmistakable realization that breakfast is impending, and it's probably unpleasant. With a pounding head and a newfound determination not to revisit yesterday's poor choices, you plod to the mirror, revealing a sight you could only describe as what happened to you last night. Your reflection looks like the aftermath of a regrettable wrestling match with a particularly obstinate pillow. The unkempt hair stands on end, a glorious nest of chaos. You might even wonder if this is the hairstyle the local cats sport when they want to appear particularly aloof. One glance at that confusion-laden visage, combined with a reminder of your escapades, raises the question: how exactly did you wander back into the land of the living? Like any decent Victorian society attendee, you muster your bravado, slip into your most presentable clothing, and prepare to face the world with a cautious smile. The world may not be coated in opium-induced delight, but at least you'll be walking through it with dignity, or something resembling it. As you step outside, the sun feels less like a harbinger of life, and more like a glaring reminder of every ridiculous thing you said during last night's heated debates on the nature of beauty, and whether cats actually rule the world. Outside, the street is alive, a cacophony of reeling and roaring sounds, reminiscent of bustling horse-drawn carriages transporting people in all manners of attire. Smells of bread and fresh produce intermingle, yet somehow the faint remnants of opium still cling to your clothes, like an unwanted perfume from a lover you hope will call, even though you know they won't. You pause, searching for familiar faces that aren't embedded in your last encounter. Instead, you find Mr. Williams, your neighbour, who spends more time staring at your door than he does living his best life. Why does he always seem to catch you at the worst moments? Clearly his life is devoid of fantasy. As you pass him, he peers at you with a look that's half concern and half poorly masked intrigue, as if he's deciphering whether you partook in a literary discussion or an existential crisis steeped in questionable substances. Perhaps it's time to address the elephant in the room, or rather the cloud of smoke in your past. It's awkward how these encounters have a knack for reminding you of the highs and lows of life's absurdities. Does he want an explanation for the slight dazed look you wear, or can he simply wonder whether you've unearthed the secrets of the universe night before last? With each footfall echoing through the cobblestone streets, reminders of the opium den swirl, not just in your whirling thoughts, but in the conversations around you. A couple of ladies converse, and it's evident they're turning tomorrow's Victorian gossip into this morning's delicacies. You lean in, intrigued, as one of them begins praising delicate lace and scandalous parties, unaware that you've already seen dimensions of life that would make even her needlework look rather tedious. You reflect on the den's interconnectedness to the excitement of the broader realm. The allure of escape fused with a nagging realization that it's all a cycle. Highs, lows, laughter and chatter. You overhear snippets of someone declaring they'd never revisit such avenues. Perhaps the opium pipeline rendered both clarity and confusion, light and shadows playing out in the quiet corners of the mind. Whether that holds true for you is a tantalizing mystery. Your life continues, not merely a dazzling wisp of vapours, but a journey into the absurd middle ground, an amalgamation of dreams and desolation with a flavour of delightful chaos. With a strengthened resolve, you march into the day, knowing that while you can't revisit those magical opium clouds, you can definitely spin stories from them that resonate far beyond a transient smoke. Indeed, reality might have its rough edges, but who's to say the aftermath isn't its own enchanting tale? Maybe that's the real lesson you learn from a night under the opiate glow, that life itself often flickers like a candle between the light and the dark, with as many stories waiting to unfold as there are clouds to drift upon. Life barely resumes itself beyond the den. People are suddenly shouting at you about responsibilities, bills, and the horror, grocery shopping. You must devise new strategies to cope with life's demands. Maybe you could just make opium tea and pretend your headache is a dose of reality. There, all sorted. You hardly needed a life coach, just a big cozy couch and a donut. But as you navigate this brave new world, you soon realise that life without a cloud of opium feels more like a clunky bicycle with a flat tyre, uncomfortably awkward and unyielding. Picture it. A walk to the grocery store is like running a marathon in a drunken fog, except instead of medals and glory, you're met with demands that feel incomprehensible. Get the organic kale, your body yells, but all you can think about is the last time you sipped something intoxicatingly delightful while lounging on those plush cushions. Instead of organic kale, you'd prefer a slice of cake with frosting, a perfectly relevant distraction if there ever was one. And so you craft your coping mechanisms. You start employing a guilt-free system of delicious denial. Ice cream becomes a food group, breakfast morphs into brunch by necessity, and snacks can be classified as necessary fuel for your brain's desperate attempts to recall the entirety of the last debate about whether potatoes make the best fries. You discover that binge-watching Victorian drama series while chowing down on potato chips is indeed a qualified substitute for your previous cloud of euphoria, at least until you run out of chips. As the days pass, your mind is still fluttering with those opium-laden wisps, echoing everything dreamy and whimsical. Sometimes it feels like you've just been launched back into a slow game of dodgeball, where responsibilities are the balls, and you lack the enthusiasm to play. You become adept at ducking and dodging, exerting all your energy into avoiding adulting. After all, this world lacks the enticing distractions of the den, where existential debates floated serenely in the air like pollen on a summer day. It takes time to develop a new set of survival tactics. Enjoying a morning cup of coffee transforms into an exploration of alternative delights. Herbal teas? You bet. But finding the right blend is like searching for the perfect pillow to suit your sleeping needs. Overwhelming and entirely underwhelming at the same time. You try chamomile, yet it whispers of sleep instead of the majestic peaks of creativity you've grown accustomed to. Try peppermint, and suddenly you're battling a caffeine-like itch to reconstruct your entire worldview. Ultimately, you reach for a style that blends both worlds, mixing the herbal with daring levels of caffeine that make you wonder if you're secretly part squirrel at this point. Amid this adjustment, those moments of clarity begin to hit. You learn to cherish the small pleasures of life. For example, there's something remarkably satisfying about successfully pairing socks, little victories amidst the chaos. It becomes a moment of triumph akin to successfully navigating a day of nonsensical conversations in the den. Your new mantra emerges: every day is an adventure, a narrative you repeat to yourself as you stand in front of your sock drawer. Walking in the park becomes your therapy. Nature effortlessly fills the void where opium-induced libraries once stood. Without even realizing it, you've transformed yourself into a quasi-Epicurean, indulging in sights, sounds, and the smell of freshly cut grass that no amount of opium could replicate. The mundane becomes poetic. A simple stroll turns into a poetic passage worthy of 6 stanzas, or at least 3 enthusiastic Instagram posts. Each flower seems to bring you back to a moment spent pondering how beautiful life can really be, even when it'll never spark the same lunacy found in the den. But just when things seem manageable, reality slaps you with a particularly unkind reminder that life remains unyielding. You wake up one Tuesday, feeling a pang of longing for the surreal euphoria you once felt amidst the captivating chaos of that cosy den. The elixir of dreams you had almost forgotten. You consider, perhaps wistfully, if maybe, just maybe, returning to the opium den might grant you clarity they say C.S. Lewis always carried. Yet, you remind yourself that while the allure of undulating clouds calls, you've unwrapped your own wings. You will find ways of creating your own little clouds of joy instead. So, while life outside the den contrasts sharply, it becomes a playground for rediscovery. You walk down streets armed with your new strategies and a hearty snack or two nestled in your pockets, creating a gentle stubbornness against the demands of modernity. You're committed to finding adventures born from both curiosity and responsibility, blending both paradoxical realms, taking the thrill of flight and choosing to navigate the earth beneath. Because surviving the withdrawal is a journey, not just a destination. And this new landscape, while jarring, is where you will continue to bloom. As you plod through the mundane of the real world, it's apparent that the haze may still linger. Everyone you've met leaves an indelible mark, and the philosophical discussions come flooding back like a delightful cloud. Perhaps the long-term effects of your visit to the opium den aren't so much physical, but rather metaphysical. Let's be honest. How else could you come to terms with the discovery that you have to share one more elevator ride with your ex? This is precisely the kind of reality check that makes you question your life choices as you embark on this confusing journey of adulthood. Did you choose adulthood, or did adulthood choose you? If the answer is the latter, then you might have some strong arguments for running back to that opium den, if only for the nostalgia. You can't shake the feeling that the people at the den were somehow more vibrant than the beige blobs droning on in your daily life. There was the poet who claimed to interpret the whispers of the universe, the one-eyed proprietor laughing at life's absurdities, and that gentleman whose laughter resembled a hyena almost drowning in liquid happiness. Those characters popped with colourful stories, each one offering a refreshing glimpse into either madness or genius, or perhaps a reckless blend of both. Walking through your day-to-day life feels like sitting through a prolonged lecture on the history of paperclips. Boring. You catch yourself imagining the conversations in the den. Have you heard about the man who invented the paperclip? Tell me more. You try to hold on to that whimsical feeling, but reality has a way of quickly shifting you back into its mundane grasp. Grocery store lines are longer than philosophical debates at the den. The cashier seems less inclined to hear your thoughts on the meaning of life than to discuss whether you found everything okay. Spoiler alert, you didn't. You're suddenly transported back to that dreamlike state, wondering how to combine toilet paper, yogurt, and a sudden existential crisis into an insightful metaphor. It feels surreal, even as real life continues around you, churning like a washing machine you forgot to turn off. And let's not forget the long-term hangover, the kind that sneaks up on you when you least expect it. Days after returning from the den, you suddenly find yourself deeply affected by the choice of your Netflix series. You keep eyeing the documentaries with insights into the human condition, while questioning everything you know about your social anxiety. Can a documentary change your life? Can it infuse the mundane with meaning? Or will you just get distracted by how often the documentary filmmaker's pet cat appears on screen? You suddenly feel acutely self-aware as you sip your tea. Is the universe sending you messages or just sending you a reminder that you need to refill your sugar bowl? Then there are your friends, blessed souls who are happily oblivious to your newfound awareness of how people interact with the cosmos. Suddenly, casual brunch conversations feel weighty, like everyone is overthinking their scrambled eggs, ruminating on the meaning of life between mouthfuls of toast. It all becomes a riveting theatre as you divulge tales of the opium den, your friends listening wide-eyed with incredulity, as if they're hearing about a secret society meeting rather than a night spent on pillows. You talk of philosophical debates and dream-induced existentialism, but did you just open up a Pandora's box of behavioural assumptions? Will they now judge your reality based on whether you've attended comparable sedated gatherings? Realistically, though, this haze might also open the doors to unexpected opportunities. You find yourself gravitating toward individuals who embrace the surreal, the artsy, and the slightly mad. Suddenly your social circle also includes people who knit hats for pigeons and debate the right of the squirrel to park itself in someone's patio. Who knew the conversations you'd bond over would be this absurd? Yet there's something soothing about their eccentricities. It establishes a safe harbour in this chaotic storm that is life, where laughter and absurdity reign supreme. At the end of the day, you realise the opium den experience morphed from indulgence into inspiration. Regardless of the physical consequences, the warmth of human connection and creative exchange lingers on. Yes, you've returned to the real world, yet you're equipped now with an expanded perception, one that appreciates the beauty of the bizarre and the grace of absurdity. And deep down, a flicker of hope remains that life can return to the elevated heights of shared marijuana-tinged laughter and awakening. And wouldn't it be splendid to search for that high in your own unremarkable corner of reality? So, as you decide how to move forward, embrace the intangible effects of your journey. Because in this world, isn't it just a little extraordinary to experience something unexpected among the ordinary? You'll find yourself re-entering the den, more cautiously, observing the same characters, but now you notice the snags in their tails, the seams in their layers. It's both fascinating and terrifying. Every person is a story, a warning, and you wonder how many of them are still looking for their own escape. Perhaps your next trip will be a journey into the art of psychology rather than pure escapism. But who are we kidding? You'll be back soon enough. It's astonishing how quickly one's perspective shifts when returning to the same smoky embrace you once sought refuge in. Remember the host? That one-eyed gentleman who initially seemed so charming? Now he almost looks like an old library book, well-thumbed, dusted with stories, yet somehow falling apart in places. You can't help but wonder how many stories he's woven over the years. Is that the weight of every whispered secret resting on his shoulders, or is it a severe lack of Pilates? You debate asking him, only to realise that may risk acute embarrassment, not to mention unwanted advice about improving your physical well-being with good old-fashioned opium instead of lunges. As you sink deeper into the den's velvet cushions, you can't ignore the peculiar cast of characters surrounding you. There's the poet, who appears to have morphed into a full-time dramatist, reciting verses with hand gestures that suggest he might just leave the realm of sobriety altogether. What was once a cardboard cutout of a witty soul is now a living mural of emotion. Perhaps a bit too much emotion, really. Every flick of his wrist now seems to have the weight of a small social gathering riding on it, and you can almost visualize the confetti raining down in response to the crescendo of his lofty oration. Doop-de-doo, the audience laughs politely, more out of pity than actual mirth. To your left sits an artist, whose once enthusiastic brushstrokes have devolved into an intricate series of doodles representing the sheer absurdity of life. You can't help but consider whether they would make great graffiti. Maybe we're all just a series of misfit cartoons, gibbering our own daily struggles into the void, and nobody noticed this until opium held a magnifying glass up to the truth of it all. Their creations are odd, intimate snapshots of moments you're not sure anyone else recognizes. Emotions drawn in charcoal and undefined shapes that blur the lines of existential dread. The hypnotic atmosphere, drifting from haze to laughter, the air infused with vibrant memories that cling to the walls, creates an echo chamber, and oddly enough, you feel a comforting camaraderie with these whimsical souls. You glance at a couple across the room who appear to be deeply engrossed in a debate over whether cats or pigeons are the true avatars of the streets. Why cats? They're enigmatic, aloof, vagabond souls, prowling the night with mysterious purpose. Why pigeons? Well, they're the ultimate underdogs, literally roaming the streets with what might be equal parts elegance and absurdity. As the argument spirals into chaotic territories of bird philosophy, you wonder if perhaps there's a secret life lesson tucked within all this feathered fanfare. And of course, you can't help but think, are we too just flapping about looking for a place to land? Amid the colourful cast around you, a sudden sense of nostalgia washes over you. The den wasn't just a hideaway, it was a crucible of transformation. You sidled in seeking solace, but walked away with memories that resemble the mixing patterns of every colour in that opium haze. And while you may judge the aftermath of each rendezvous, you can't deny the beauty of it all. The splashes of humanity, the stark representations of joy and despair wrangled into one environment, as enchanting and twisted as any fairy tale. But before you get too comfortable, The sheer pressure of reality starts knocking at your door. The characters you see, do they even exist beyond these walls? Out there, in your world of meetings and responsibilities? You might be amazed by how easily you can slip back into the daily grind, finding ways to smuggle phrases like, pass the chicken, and let's circle back into social gatherings, all while pretending it's all splendid. Isn't it ironic? In a realm where dreams and dreadful discussions dance in an unholy waltz, you're questioning how you'll navigate this world labelled mundane. As you consider this tightrope to treading both worlds, laughter bursts forth from a corner, an unmistakable sound resonating like a siren call. You're suddenly drawn to it, each peal wrapping around you like icing draped on a fantastical dessert. In that moment, you realise that perhaps returning to the den is less about escapism and more about remembrance. Its echoes serving as a reminder that your laughter remains a tether both in and out of the hazy dreamscape of life. Whether you link up again with this cast of wonderful oddities, or choose to float elsewhere in chase of whimsical pursuits, is entirely on you. Just remember, the line between jubilance and chaos is often blurred under heavy layers of opium fog, inviting you into a labyrinth of insight and plenty of unclear conversations. The buzz about these opium dens stretches throughout London. People claim secrets are exchanged, fortunes made or lost, lives shifted, and you realise you've entered a community rich with narratives, where everything from literature to scandal intertwines. You can't help feeling like you've been dipping your toes into an undercurrent of Victorian gossip that could churn out bestsellers for decades. Imagine that the very walls of the den pulse with stories, with the voices of artists, poets, and common folk blending into a rich mosaic of human experience. It's like being at a dinner party where the guests are proposed murderers, heartbroken lovers, and clerks dabbling in philosophy, all swapping tales as potent as the opium filling the air. In fact, it isn't long before you realise that every patron here could probably pen a memoir worthy of a Nobel Prize, or at least a great short story that your college professor would give a gold star for. You overhear snippets of the precarious lives spilled out like errant opium smoke, whispering secrets that could knock the monocle right off a nearby banker's face. A gentleman with a twisted moustache recounts how he once lost a fortune betting against a poet's ability to stay sober through an entire sonnet. Spoiler alert, he didn't make it, and neither did his credibility when it was revealed that he took a long nap instead of attending the reading he was meant to critique. Names are dropped as casually as the pipe you just passed around. Here's a juicy tidbit. Some claim that Charles Dickens was once a regular in these den circles. They say he was scrawling the raw emotions of the streets onto napkins, lost somewhere between hard reality and opium-induced reverie. You can almost envision him marrying the themes of poverty and dreams with a terrible rhyming scheme, a man just trying to get by in this confusing world where even parsnips might seem profound under a heavy cloud. And then you hear a raucous laugh erupt from a corner. There's nothing quite like laughter born from smoke and shared stories. It's as if mirth interspersed with melancholy fashions a sort of bittersweet communion among strangers. A woman, adorned in layers of flowing silk like a gentle cloud drifting through the sea of patrons, regales everyone about a love affair with a poet who wrote sweet verses that made her swoon, until he traded her for artisanal toast and a personality in desperate need of pickling. You can't help but think, how could anyone choose a mundane breakfast over the ecstasy of poetic expression, the tragedy? You ponder if her heart is still floating around that den like a leaf on a river. As the night wears on, your mind dances between the tales shared and your own moments of escapism. You consider how the magic of these conversations transcends the physical smoke curling overhead. It's really about connection and human longing interwoven into whimsical poetry. Here, time feels elastic, as if the very fabric of reality has been dipped in opium-laced ink. You start to envision yourself surrounded by your literary heroes, debating the meaning of existence over all manners of extravagance. What would Shakespeare say about the modern existential crisis? Could he make a compelling case for what it means to be human, even in this haze? Yet, the haze carries an underlying truth that these stories also stem from despair. For every raucous laughter, there's a heart silently aching, yearning for a different life, a different outcome. The rumblings of societal change rest heavily in the air, whispering messages of revolution and anger that seep beneath the lush fabrics and fragrant smoke. It dawns on you that in this strange sanctuary no one escapes their destiny unscathed. Stories of artists and musicians who sacrificed everything for fleeting fame hover like phantoms, shadows of brilliance cut short, leaving cautionary tales for those who linger to listen. As you contemplate the magic and sadness surrounding you, it's clear that these opium dens aren't just a place for smokers. They're a haven for dreamers, a lifeboat for souls who float too far out to sea. So, as you inhale deeply, cherishing this moment, you can't help but wonder if your experience in this den will transform into a tale that one day resonates far beyond these smoky walls. Will you be the one writing the legend of your own life, or will your voice whisper only through the remnants of opium vapour? In the end, perhaps that's the true power of the opium den. It doesn't just steal time and consciousness. It captures the essence of existence, the joys, the sorrows, and the tales that shape us all. Who knew that a gathering place for smoke and dreams could lead to such profound contemplation, where every laugh resonates like a clap of thunder in your heart? So you settle deeper into those plush cushions in search of stories not just shared but created, a narrative still waiting to unfold. Artists and poets claimed heaps of creativity spawned from opium-induced dreams. You wonder who among your newfound companions could possibly be the next William S. Burroughs or Samuel Taylor Coleridge, who might leave behind scintillating verses inspired by the ethereal and the absurd. And if that were you, would you be able to recall a single line of it the next morning? The room is thick with inspiration as you inhale deeply, the heady smoke wrapping itself around your consciousness like a warm artistic blanket. Is that a vision of daisies playing poker, or just the brain trying to juggle absurdities while taking a tea break from reality? You glance at the seasoned poet stirring his tea with a quill, muttering rhythmic couplets and perfecting his intricate wrinkles. They've mastered the art of opium rhythm, tapping their herbal-infused imagination into wordsmith wizardry. You ask yourself, will you emerge from this haze equally enlightened or merely with an embarrassing collection of the warm memories that can only be adequately expressed during extreme sleep deprivation drives at 3 a.m? As laughter and emotion ricochet off the walls like unruly butterflies, you create a task force of delightful absurdity in your mind. Could you channel your newfound creative energy into a poem about the gentleman in the corner who spills his wine like an avant-garde artist, accidentally decorating a canvas? The more you ponder, the more the chaotic symphony of voices weaves bright images in your imagination. Rainbows composed of uproarious laughter and existential musings. Can one truly paint shadows of truth amid the dramatic comedy of life, swinging from laughter to silence like a pendulum on a loose hinge? Soon enough, another patron enthusiastically chants tales of great artistic figures who once roamed through smoky parlours and drawn shades, claiming opium was the lifeblood of their creations. It's said that the likes of Charles Dickens and Edgar Allan Poe found their inspiration hidden away within the billowing clouds of such elusive indulgences. You take a moment, eyeing your companions as they nod in agreement, realizing that even the most rigorous of critics turned a blind eye when faced with the intoxicating allure of art born from a high phase of reality. Within this swirly mix of tobacco, whispers and chaos, you notice an artist sketching feverishly in the corner. His charcoal dances across the paper, creating ethereal images of individuals trapped in that in-between state of consciousness, where dreams and reality collide like two procrastinators accidentally meeting each other. Your brain crackles with curiosity as you ponder his creation. Are those portraits of your fellow patrons or figments of a chaotic imagination setting course through the murky sea of opium? As you sip your own concoction of mind-bending joy, it hits you. Perhaps creativity isn't bound to a substance, but rather the shared moments within it. The laughter, the private jokes and the illusions of grandeur are the life-affirming seeds of inspiration. You ponder if you can truly tap into this great reservoir of creativity, turning stories of ludicrous events into engaging little tidbits capable of capturing hearts and hollow laughter alike. Surely the evening spent in this hazy cloud must craft a legacy that echoes long after the smoke has dispersed. Emboldened by the artistic frenzy surrounding you, you feel a surge to pick up your own pen, to dabble in this world of dreamy expression. After all, who could resist crafting a narrative spun from the threads of your ridiculous experiences? You visualize an adventure that could blend the absurdity of life with the existential questioning that accompanies such escapades. Would you write about the peculiar humour of believing you can solve universal mysteries while swaying under a weighted blanket of opium-induced thoughts? Or the refined absurdity of presenting elegant excuses for leaving a conversation during a drunken debate on the superiority of turtles over rabbits? Suddenly, instead of feeling lost and confused, you embrace the chaos surrounding you with open arms like a child receiving an oversized stuffed animal. The absurd steps you take within this ethereal domain hold the power to inspire, to forge your own dreamlike reality. The creative energy swimming around you, like exuberant fish in a flowing stream, invites you to surface alongside them. Perhaps the wisest cherubs of creativity reside within our chaotic souls, waiting for the perfect moment, a warm evening in a Victorian opium den, to whirl together into life's own masterpiece. And with that thought elegantly in tow, you plunge forth through the ebbing mist, ready to weave your own extravagant story among the angels. It's fascinating how much we engage with humour and sorrow in this environment. So many voices and stories echo in your mind. You sense the importance of connection in the midst of otherworldly escapism, a reminder that beneath every cloud of smoke lies laughter, dreams and lessons that carry far beyond starlit poetry. No one truly wants only to escape. They crave to be reminded they're alive. In a Victorian opium den, the delicate ballet between joy and despair plays out elegantly, like two reluctant partners caught in an intricate waltz. Imagine watching as your fellow patrons drift from giggles to contemplative silence, their expressions pinballing between delight and melancholy, a human kaleidoscope of emotions fueled by clouds of dreamy haze. As you settle deeper into the cushions, the stories unfold like a patchwork quilt, stitched together with whimsical threads of experience. You overhear a poet sharing the latest lines of his unfinished sonnet about lost love, every word wrapped in an exquisite longing that tastes like bittersweet chocolate. It strikes you that there's something profoundly beautiful and tragic about sharing vulnerability with strangers, regardless of the haze binding you together. What worth is there in a life untouched by laughter or clouded by tragedy? A sudden thought crosses your mind. Are these patrons simply avoiding reality, or are they delving into its depths, exploring those tender spots in the human experience that often go unexamined? At the far end of the parlour, a woman cradles her opium pipe like a long-lost friend, her laughter light and airy. When a nearby gentleman theatrically stumbles into the wall attempting to make his point about the need for more opium-flavoured pastries, you can't help but chuckle. Or perhaps it's the remnants of the opium playing tricks on you. Humour dances in and out, diffusing tension and forging connections amidst a swirl of colourful banter. Would this ripple of laughter be as intoxicating without the haze of opium? Could such cheer even exist in a world bustling with responsibility? Here you find a collective truth. Shared laughter is a balm for the soul, and suddenly your worries feel lighter than the smoke curling through the air. The laughter is soon juxtaposed with moments of sombre reflection, as you overhear whispered confessions swirling amidst the fog. Darker themes emerge, stories of lost loves, shattered dreams, and the relentless passage of time. Each story seems stitched with heartache, yet they carry a lightness reminiscent of a sorrowful serenade that both moves and uplifts. In the delicate interplay of joy and grief, you realize the deep human need to express oneself, to turn struggle into stories. This, you conclude, is the essence of life, particularly in a space that exists on the threshold of reality. In this extraordinary den of forbidden pleasures, you notice how each flickering candle illuminates faces with an otherworldly glow, giving rise to tales not fit for polite society but perfect for drifting souls seeking solace. As you partake of the opium, it feels less like an escape and more like an invitation to something timeless, an awareness of interconnectivity that transcends beyond walls and windows closed by daylight. You can't help but reflect on the paradox. To truly live, one must embrace both laughter and lament, allowing them to intertwine gracefully like vines creeping over a forgotten fence. As moonbeams filter through the opium haze, illuminating conversation and reveries, you find space to explore your own thoughts. Perhaps you've stumbled upon a personal truth in the camaraderie of shared laughter, one that resonates even outside these walls, the fine line between ecstasy and void. You ponder how everyday moments can similarly hold layers of joy and sorrow, waiting quietly for someone to peel them back, a testament to human experience. As the night unfolds, you're filled with warmth and gratitude. When the world outside seems chaotic and challenging, you recognize that embracing these moments, not merely as distractions but as lessons, allows you to plumb the depths of existence and emerge richer for it. Each story, each laugh, and each tear is woven into a larger tapestry, a reminder of the resilience in vulnerability. So on this peculiar night of dreams and laughter, you take a deep breath, absorbing the sensory overload, the taste of warmth, and the understanding that perhaps the strangest places can be refuges for the bravest souls. You realize that the experience isn't about seeking oblivion but about awakening, an exploration of intricate emotions lying just beyond the surface. Reinvigorated by these realizations, your spirit settles into a comfortable acceptance. You celebrate the absurdity, the sorrow, and above all the connections forged in this intricate dance between the hallowed joy and lingering lament. Opium dens might seem elusive, but they have left a lasting impression on culture itself. You've unknowingly become part of an underground revolution that seeped into novels, plays, and visionary thoughts, all while finger-painting your way through history. So, how will you mould your tale? With the grit of a classic Victorian romp? Or maybe through the smoke and laughter inspired by your own makeshift opium den? As you begin to draw connections, you realize these establishments contributed significantly to cultural movements, influencing art, literature, and even social commentary. Picture yourself in a murky pub somewhere along the cobblestone streets of old London, where the scent of tobacco and questionable hygiene mingles in the air. Here, the beverage of choice isn't your average ale or a robust punch. but a delicate infusion of opium that promises an escape from the drudgery of everyday life. Writers of the time, poets and novelists alike, found both muse and madness in opium. They gathered in these dens, swapping ideas like currency, often penning verses that dance between clarity and chaos. One gulp of this euphoric elixir, and suddenly you're Shakespeare pondering unuttered soliloquies, or a rebellious Baudelaire weaving rituals of ecstasy with a breath of existence. And yet, while these literary figures travelled the clouded world of opium, the effects rippled through society. Plays began to reflect the intoxicating haze permeating their atmospheres, often exploring themes of addiction, desire, and despair. Who could forget the chilling nightmare that inspired the creation of the Elephant Man? Realities once hidden beneath the veil of polite society unleashed their grip on creativity. It's not merely fiction anymore. The reality outside was a potent narrative rich with tales of misfits and outcasts, a perfect motif for the Victorian stage. If only you could unearth a lost script as pertinent as Gatsby, weaving whimsical tales infused with poppy opulence and foie gras. Let us not ignore the delightful visual artists who flitted about the murky alleys, using opium as the secret pigment on their palettes. You can hear whispers of luminaries like Van Gogh, who saw light and shadow with vivid clarity, or perhaps it was the blurred vision imparted by the clouds of his own dense fog. Could he have painted Starry Night under the moonlight inspiration of an opiate reverie? The very brush strokes echo the urgency of escaping your harsh reality artistically, expressing the splendid absurdity of humankind's dichotomy between enlightenment and indulgence. Your urge to ponder what hidden colours of your own exist within the smoke. And of course, no conversation about the cultural impact of opium would be complete without addressing its infiltration into everyday societal taboos. It dared to challenge the strict morality of Victorian society, sparking debates. These discussions ranged from the depths of addiction to the fragility of morality and the occasional death knell of a good friend. These debates echoed in parlours, salons, and the shadowy corners of opium establishments. Listen closely, and you'll find critics expressing concerns about declining morality, almost as though they were plucking the strings of some perilous societal lute, strumming cautionary tales across the community. In this confluence of creativity and context, the opium den became not merely an escape, but a cultural phenomenon. Your nightly excursions unravel a mesh of experiences, shared stories, and newfound philosophies. Fascination swells. The walls themselves seem to breathe narratives born from swirling heavens. It beckons you to champion your own engagement with the unfiltered truth of life's fragility. As the echoes of laughter and discussion fade into the night, the den's very essence becomes woven into the fabric of your being. Would you share your dreams and nightmares with future generations? Would you dare to taste the bittersweet sketches left behind? Or perhaps you'd hide them away, like the last piece of an exquisite chocolate cake. In the end, you may find your journey through this lavish haze reflects the deeper truth of all human experience, the universal longing for connection amid chaos. Just as the opium-drenched walls of the past whispered tales of rebels and romantics, so too will your story twine with the complex legacies forged by those willing to explore the intersections of love, loss, and the joys of intoxication. And remember, even in the fog's dense embrace, clarity can emerge, illuminating the threads of creativity woven into the vast tapestry of human expression. Will you answer the call to craft your tale amid this swirling haze? The depths of the mind remain a wondrous realm that few explore, yet everyone longs to engage. The boundary between intoxication and inspiration is fragile, blurred in the haze of your smokescreen. As you settle down on your comfortable couch, replay those moments and conversations. Maybe jot down a line or two. Who knows? You could inspire someone else trapped in their own world one day. You reminisce about the figures flitting in and out of your memory, faces emerging like ghosts with tales of their own, wandering poets, washed-up philosophers, and that one guy who seemed to lose track of his own name due to a particularly delightful opium fog. The curious thing about your adventure in the opium den is how clearly you've begun to understand both the charming allure and sheer absurdity of it all. Each person you met shared their struggles, whether it was existential dread over dinner conversations or simply wanting to find a colourful way to escape their day-to-day monotonies. In today's world, you can't help but think about how similar those discussions were to today's coffee shop chats, complete with the existential angst of the modern era. In many ways, life is simply an ongoing attempt to find the right blend of caffeine-induced clarity and ethereal wonder. Yet, the most resonant aspect of the experience is the unexpected camaraderie formed in a shared haze. In the dens, strangers became allies, at least for the duration of their drug-induced revelations. Life can feel terribly isolating, but deep in that smoky atmosphere, everyone was just trying to connect. Much like there's an invisible thread connecting us all to the collective experience of laughing at our own failings. That shared relief of letting go of reality and dissolving into myth just for a moment or two is now something you yearn to replicate, albeit in ways a little less aromatic and a bit more practical. As you sift through your memories, you chuckle at the bewildering conversations about why cats might just be plotting world domination, or perhaps your musings about the deeper philosophical implications of your favourite breakfast cereal. Somehow, those topics felt profoundly important in the moment, like you were unearthing ancient truths that could change the course of humanity. A delightful illusion, yet entirely memorable. Life outside that opium haze feels a little more mundane after all those magical digressions, but in a good way. You realise now that life's absurdity can be a treasure trove of persistent curiosity, something to embrace rather than fear. So what have you really learned? The significance lies in the human connections made through shared experiences, magnified by the intoxicating effects of opium. Perhaps it's less about the substances consumed and more about the stories exchanged, each tale catching its own shimmering light, twinkling like those stars you might have seen through the den's smoky veil. After all, those moments were portals. They flung wide open the doors to new thoughts and feelings, vestiges of uncertainty made approachable by each person daring to share their experiences while straddling the line between intoxication and awareness. In a world cluttered with digital distractions and relentless schedules, it becomes painfully clear that we crave authentic connection. Your time in the opium den sheds light on a universal truth. We all desire to be seen, heard, and understood. And those relationships, scattered like ashes in the wind, remind you of the vibrant tapestry we weave together. A community of humans compelled to share our dreams, fears, and hopes, even if that means temporarily stepping outside the walls of reality. Will you ever return to such a den again? Who's to say? Maybe not for the opium, but perhaps for the camaraderie, for the laughter that can erupt unannounced from a room filled with fog and imagination. Those memories etched into the fabric of your existence reveal that life, just like a night at an opium den, is a work of art. Chaotic, colourful, and powerful. It can be intoxicating, disorienting, enlightening, and downright silly, all in equal measures. And isn't that just the dream? It's time to wander out into the real world again and stretch your limbs. The experience marked you in ways you can't quite articulate. You find yourself laughing at your own absurd thoughts and revelling in the chaos of life ahead. Each moment becomes infused with colour, just like the opium dreams you've now woven into the fabric of your days. As you step outside, the sunlight feels like a gentle hug, transforming everything it touches into something vibrant and alive. A stark contrast to the dim chambers where you lost yourself among clouds of laughter and introspection. With each breath, you're reminded that there's a world out there that doesn't revolve around the ebb and flow of smoke. You glance up at the skies, a brilliant blue that feels cleaner than freshly fallen snow. It's as if the universe conspired to wipe your slate clean, giving you a fresh start tinged with nostalgia. You suddenly feel the urge to connect the dots of your life with a quirkiness that has been missing for far too long. Remember that philosopher who was certain the universe had a plan? How quaint. You can't help but wonder if that plan involves spontaneously purchasing an accordion to join a travelling circus. Well, not really. But it sounds good, doesn't it? As you stroll through the streets, you notice the fine folks around you, bustling off to jobs and obligations, unaware that somewhere in the back of their minds lingers a desire for the excitement of an opium den. Perhaps they too argue over the existential meaning of life, but lack the perfect haze to ignite their philosophic passions. You spot a man tripping over his own briefcase. How did he manage this in broad daylight? Surely tripping over your briefcase should be reserved for a comedy act, not the Monday morning grind. Life feels refreshingly chaotic, and it's hard not to chuckle at almost anything. At that moment, you spot a corner cafe. The sign reads, "Caffeine, your mother's favourite opponent." You smirk at their clever tagline and decide to take a seat, humorously wondering if ordering a coffee would be an acceptable substitute for opium. You get comfortable while pondering whether your caffeine buzz will spark new adventures or leave you wildly jittery, reenacting a scene straight out of a Victorian novel, but with a twist of modern absurdity. After all, who needs opium when you have espresso? As your mind drifts back to the den, you recall the laughter and joy that sucked you in like a warm embrace. The characters you met in the haze, each so vivid and relatable, reminded you that everyone has a story, a passion for revelry, and battles of their own. What would it take to convince some of your ordinary friends to convert Saturday meetings at their book club into flights of fancy? You can already envision a gathering where everyone regales tales about their latest misadventures, enhanced by a smattering of laughter and absurd side bets. And then it strikes you. This newfound awareness is not simply a walk down memory lane, but a fresh lens through which to view life. The opium den may just be a metaphor for indulging in creativity without bounds, be it through art, jokes that only half work, or even the delightful awkwardness of fumbling through social situations. Shall you explore a world where laughter becomes your artist's brush, painting life with all its colours and contours? With a cup of rich, steaming coffee in one hand and a wild sparkle in your eye, you step back into the flow of pedestrian life, not as a mere bystander, but as an enthusiastic participant. You'll challenge yourself to speak to strangers, to invite old friends to adventure, and to fill your diary with whimsical stories, at least one of which will involve discovering an entirely new genre of literature that combines polar bears and existential dread. Because perhaps, after all this, you've learned that escaping into the haze isn't about avoiding reality but fully engaging with it. A reminder that life, in all its overwhelming chaos, can beautifully evolve into an adventure where old tales transform into new ones. You stride confidently ahead, ready to unfurl the next chapter, weaving a narrative that captures both the surreal and relatable in its folds. Who knows what kind of extraordinary mischief awaits you? After all, in a universe rife with diversity, a little adventure can transcend dreams and trials alike. Perhaps this experience isn't a one-time affair. Maybe there's wisdom to be found in revisiting the den, in layers of thought and camaraderie. Each visit provides an opportunity for exploration and connection. Consider the opium den a breadcrumb trail, leading you closer to unravelling your innermost mysteries one whimsical puff at a time. It's almost like a recurring dream you hope to experience again, except this time there's a solid chance you won't awaken to find your aunt's cat staring at you like you've lost your marbles. Instead, you might find yourself back in that intoxicating cloud of blue and purple hues, tipped off by the alluring aroma wafting from strange corners, a kind of delightful siren's call, urging you to dive deeper. Imagine making this a habit. You'd craft a schedule like a determined philosopher, intent on deciphering life's greatest secrets, one smoky encounter at a time. Jot it down on your calendar. Monday evening, opium exploration, and watch as your fellow patrons raise their tea mugs in support. You'd spot regulars, those veteran seekers of fun intricately entwined with nostalgia, some adorned in shabby velvet coats while waving away floating thoughts like butterflies that just won't land. They might give you tips. You must try sharing a pipe with Lady Fernwick. She can sing the dreams out of you. Or never argue over poetry with Mr. Thistleton. He might just bring the whole room down. But alas, the act of pilgrimage also means you inevitably run the risk of encountering darker aspects of opium culture. The individuals hoping to trudge their way back to euphoria, but perhaps one puff past moderation. You might spot someone whose cheekbone could serve as a good resting spot for a teacup, philosophizing about their next big idea, or at least half-heartedly attempting to connect, airily, like gossamer threads flitting through smoke. They mumble about the absolute truth of the universe, and your heart may simultaneously ache for their plight and laugh at their sincerity. Sure, no one's really aware of the heavyweight consequences that surround this opium-centric lifestyle, but for the moment you're all suspended in a bliss cloud. Dinosaurs of emotions and thoughts bobbing about like drunk flamingos smashing away at their self-image. You begin to revel in the dialectics of existentialism, madness, and the joy of sheltering puffs from the world outside. Let's face it, maybe it's an escape into pure imagination, or a romantic notion of rebellion against society's expectations. Then there's the magical community that forms around you. Whether you crave it or not, you're part of something. There's chatter, laughter, and connections you might not have imagined. Did you see the latest gossip about Lord Blatherskite? Apparently he's been writing poetry about hurricanes. The tales spiral around like the smoke, and you can't help but chuckle, partway moving closer to the consensus that perhaps the world outside holds little magic compared to the swirling colours of your current abode. Yet, as enchanting as it may be, the coming down moments creep in stealthily, asking you to confront the real world outside. Gasp. Suddenly you find yourself at a crossroads. Do you want to be a baron of this shadow kingdom, or risk returning to reality? Decisions. Your internal narrative becomes more convoluted than a cheap Victorian novel, tossing around between dreams and consequences like an unsteady ship at sea. But here's the beauty of it. Amidst the swirling emotions, there's something even more ephemeral preparing to burst forth. Each visit unearths more layers of yourself, more reflections from the quirks of this unusual den culture. The stories become tapestries, woven from one trip to the next, where moments of euphoria hover right alongside heart-rending truths. So every periodic pilgrimage beckons another layer, an invitation to dance with the shadows of your perceptions while exploring existential truths. You become an apprentice to the art of living, musing over experiences that blur the lines between reality and surrealism, sweetened with the nectar of joy as you untangle your own mind. Each opium-induced adventure draws you nearer to those you never knew you would encounter. Inspirations possible through humorous exchanges, laughter that stretches past borders, and dreams, each one waiting just beyond the smoke at the heart of the den. Before long, you realise your life is richer for it, perhaps a little more knowingly chaotic, but undoubtedly more colourful than anything a mundane Monday could ever summon. And there you are, an aficionado of opium adventures, eyes twinkling with the delight of having etched your essence in every fantastical escapade. Life outside the den still carries traces of all that you experienced. Friends inquire about your recent unconventional escapades. Thoughts of laughter flow like an opiate-laden haze. You realise you're equipped with new insights to share about existence, a slight grin on your lips, and answers to their queries more bizarre yet undeniably vibrant than they could have imagined. You step into your day-to-day life with a surreal sense of confidence, as if you've acquired a cloak woven from dreams and released from the heavy burden of your previous reality. Suddenly the world feels richer, filled with colourful characters and echoless laughter that could only be produced by someone who's danced through clouds in a Victorian haze. You meet your friend Carl at the local pub, a stark contrast to the plush, decadent cushions of the opium den. As he rants about his latest relationship drama over a pint, you can't help but interject with a philosophical quip about love being like a bad opium blend, intoxicating until you wake up with a hangover of regret. Carl raises an eyebrow, slightly confused but intrigued. How can one navigate love's complexities using an analogy steeped in the fragrant allure of smoky dreams? You chuckle softly, an enigmatic smile gracing your lips, a subtle reminder that enlightenment often resides in absurdity and unexpected connections. While sharing stories, you begin to realise that every interaction now feels like a small detour into the whimsical world you just escaped. Your friend Greta, who you usually see as an emotional GPS, do this, avoid that, don't forget to care about your responsibilities, is now an enchanting mixture of dragon and dove. You're taking in her words with newfound patience, recognising how the weight of your recent indulgence has shifted your perspectives. Greta, darling, you'd make a lovely jester, you say, and she laughs, the sound light and merry. The mist from the opium den lingers. It pushes you into the realm of fearless honesty, where you find the words bubble forth without pretense. But amidst this newfound enlightenment, there's a whisper of guilt, an echo of the darker corners you treaded through. A part of you wonders if it's appropriate to share too much. Should you reveal the depths of that cosy void, or the moments when clarity felt so breathtakingly unsettling? Could your peers handle the juxtaposition of deeper understanding alongside the complexities of escapism? Or would they react as you once did, with a mix of intrigue and apprehension, unsure of how to respond to the unfurling tapestry of humanity drenched in dreams? As nights blend into days, you notice life's edges softening. Conversations at the pub become infused with raucous laughter about pigeons wearing hats or whispers about the secret lives of historical figures you can only pretend to take seriously. Sometimes, the absurd questions come back. For example, does the local feral cat have its own opium den? Is that why it always looks so relaxed, basking in the dappled sunlight? Each whimsy becomes a flower of connection and camaraderie, sprouting precisely when you least expect it, nurtured by the enchanted echoes of your late-night den experiences. Then there are the dreams, the surreal landscapes where you find yourself tumbling down imaginative rabbit holes of opium-induced memories, floating above your relentless chores, gliding over work deadlines, where all worry dissolves into a spicy whiff of curried comfort. It's as if life has transformed into an elaborate theatrical production, where characters lie in wait, performing their roles with an absurd flair that makes the mundane feel splendid. However, every now and then the contrast hits hard, pulling you back to the reality of bills to pay, unwashed dishes, and that ever-persistent neighbour who insists on discussing unsolicited home improvement advice in the doorway. But even these moments fold like recycled paper, softening the edges of irritation with an acceptance of the wild humanity unfolding before you. You chuckle inwardly, recognising that everyone is fighting their own chaos, perhaps even searching for their own means of escape. Ultimately, the journey back into the everyday has revealed hidden treasures through the kaleidoscope of life, the vibrant blend of laughter, companionship, and the fragrances of experiences both light and shadowed. With every step forward, you carry a hint of the opium den within you, not as an escape, but as a reminder that imbibing the strange and absurd merely exposes the beautiful complexity of existence. So, whether you're sharing a laugh with Carl over a flimsy fortune or reflecting on Greta's latest misadventure, you nurture those delightful opium-scented intricacies that colour the world in hues you never knew you needed, exploring each moment like a fragrant wine tasting, a thoughtful sip of life's layered experiences. While Victorian opium dens might be confined to a specific historical context, you ponder how opium's legacy expanded globally into different cultures, dreams curling like tendrils in the air. It seems the appeal of drifting into fantastical slumbers is a universal desire, not limited to powdered pleasures, but open to all manner of delightful escape from reality's gripping hold. The very notion of seeking solace in an altered state transcends time and geography, from the lush valleys of the Himalayas with their hashish-infused tea to the vibrant streets of Marrakesh, where peppermint tea mixes with a whiff of smoke. It's clear that the human experience of seeking out indulgence finds a home in many settings. Imagine yourself in India, surrounded by colourful bazaars where the sweet, heady aroma of bhang, a potent mix of cannabis and milk, wafts through the air, tempting you to take a sip. Here, the intoxicating ingredients are often viewed not only as recreational delights, but also as conduits to spirituality. Locals may gather in circles, sharing laughter, stories, and herbal concoctions, evoking the same fuzzy connection and bliss you encountered within your Victorian opium den, although perhaps with fewer dapper gentlemen and more temple bells. Then there's the ancient Chinese culture, where opium was first celebrated for medicinal use, long before dens became hotspots for philosophical debates cooked up in thick smoke. You can almost hear the whispers of patients claiming that opium soothed their ailments better than any tea or herbal remedy could. They raved about it, their hearts swirling like the smoke they puffed. And there you are, among the historical figures and poets, contemplating how one little poppy seed unleashed an insatiable craving that even the sternest empires couldn't resist. Not far from those legendary eastern realms lies North Africa, where the cultural tapestry thickens with hashish smoking as part of traditional festivities. Picture a lively courtyard during a marriage celebration, everyone joining hands for a dance that somehow keeps refusing to be in sync. Could be the hashish, or simply the result of quirky family dynamics. The smoke curls upward, creating clouds that mingle with laughter and music, much like the great Victorian haze you once revelled in. And let's not forget Paris, the city of lights and loves, which embraced opium as a muse for some of the most iconic literary works in history. Picture poets and painters giving in to the dreamy enchantments of their own design, fueled by the opiate romance that whispered to each artist's innermost longing. It's less about a mere escape. It's a lavish feast for the senses, impossibly lush like a decadent dessert that not even the best bakery could recreate. The idea of losing oneself in the arts resonates with you, tantalizing and inviting you to join that nightly revelry, even if only in your mind. From the shimmering shores of Hawaii, where the Aina land yields lush crops of kava and other delectable plants, you can taste freedom. Groups gather around, treasures of nature in hand, and prepare concoctions that send you spiralling through hours of laughter and lively debate. Watching a sunset over the ocean while sipping kava could feel oddly similar to your experiences in that smoky den, peaceful yet liberating at the same time. However, where there's a thrilling escape, there's also a chilling aftermath. The shadow of addiction creeps behind every delight, whispering that not all escapism leads to enlightenment, especially when paths diverge. Many have fallen prey to this enticement, traversing along a blurred line between indulgence and dependency that clouds the vibrant wisdom of these ancient cultures. So, as you drift through this world of smoke and shadow, hear the cautionary tales echoing in the back of your mind. Yes, opium has slumbered into the fabric of our shared human experience, but so has the understanding that indulging in these crafts requires responsibility and awareness. You have danced around a fire that ignites creativity and comfort. Now you must ask how to carry this knowledge into your waking life. It dawns on you that it stretches far beyond simply chasing the next high. It's about fostering spaces for imagination, connection, and mutual respect amidst your exploration of diverse cultures. So tonight, as your thoughts drift back to the lessons learned in those velvety clouds of opium smoke, you embrace the journey of finding joy in connection, creativity, and wonderment, reminding yourself that the essence of these experiences can remain alive in you without the need for escape. After all, it's not just about the substance, it's about the stories, the laughter, the connections made, and the warm embrace of shared humanity that lingers long after the smoke clears. Reflecting on the chaos, you consider the inherently transformative nature of experience, how opium sparked philosophy, art, and ultimately awareness. Perhaps it's not merely about the indulgence, it's about understanding who we are, delving deep into laughter and sorrow, and weaving together the threads of imagination to craft coherent stories in this bizarre tapestry called life. You start realizing that within the decadent haze lingers a deeper truth. Each inhale of that fragrant smoke seems to lift the veil, clarifying your understanding of existence itself. In those smoky corners of the opium den, you become a reluctant philosopher, intrigued by the conversations swirling around you. The drunken musings of artists, poets, and miscreants blend like watercolour splashes on a canvas, merging realms of reality and dreams. One moment, you find yourself bantering with a charming poet who oscillates between allegories of love and despair, while the next moment, an eccentric artist interprets the universe as a gigantic cat chasing its own tail, a figure so profound you can almost see it swim through the clouds. It's astonishing how opium transforms the mundane into the extraordinary. Laughter emerges from the most unexpected corners, sending ripples of joy through the air like a melody that dances amidst the chaos. An impromptu singing contest erupts, where everyone serenades their own quirks while clinging to makeshift pipes as if they were microphones. You catch notes of wildly inappropriate love ballads that seem to take root in the deepest part of your heart, transforming acute critical thinking into euphoric bliss. In this suspended reality, you forget the shackles of daily life, a temporary liberation from adulting, responsibility, or, heaven forbid, tax returns. Yet, between the slivers of laughter lie darker and more existential dialogues, each infused with reflections on life's futility and the complexities of the human condition. The vulnerability of those around you becomes palpable. A man leans in closer, his voice trembling as he confesses his love for a woman long lost to whimsy. You listen, enraptured. How can one person feel so intensely about a fleeting moment? Perhaps it's this intersection of sadness and joy, the keen knowledge that love can exist in even the most ephemeral spaces, that reveals an essential aspect of humanity. You glance around at faces softened by the opiate. Their truths, fears and dreams float suspended around you, mingling like a temporary feast meant not just to consume, but to be woven into some larger collective human experience. Gradually, these stories begin to inspire your imagination, each tale filling the empty pages of your mind that you didn't even know existed. You start sketching in your imagination, a silhouette here, a poetic phrase there, all fusing into a vibrant tapestry of potential narratives. What if you penned a poem about the man who found beauty in loss? How about a story surrounding the artist unraveling the secrets of time through a whimsical cat? Opium elevates your creativity from the mundane to the extraordinary. It deftly paints a landscape where fascination and absurdity become the very fabric of your being. However, your musings come with a bitter-sweet catch. As laughter turns to melancholy, you realize that reality is just a breath away. The gentle undertow of your surroundings reminds you that opium, for all its enchanting charm, blurs lines. Those beautiful creations and profound realizations linger on the precipice of your mind, dangerously perched between inspiration and delusion. Within this delicate balance lies the faint whisper of a life you lived before, a persistent reminder that chasing dreams can sometimes lead to convoluted paths of addiction, masking underlying pain with fantasy. But therein lies the magic. In moments where you teeter between an epiphany and an emotional collapse, you discover an essence of being human, a complex dance we all perform in and out of our den-like lives. Each high and low bespeaks an integral journey, a learning curve rather than mere indulgence. Like the smoke that swirls around you, perception flickers, revealing hidden nuances. It's a microcosm of the human experience, an exploration of connection, vulnerability, and authenticity amidst absurdity. As the evening unfolds, you come to recognize a crucial truth. Each opium-laden bite of creation is an invitation, not just to explore one's hidden self, but to find purpose amidst illusions. A reminder that substance isn't the goal, but rather the moments shared. The genuine laughter, the cathartic experiences that breathe colour into the human experience. So when the high fades and you find yourself on the threshold of reality again, you take a piece of the evening with you, a lingering sense of belonging, enriched by the laughter, the artistry, and the unique shared experience of chaos that can only be captured in those intimate spaces of vulnerability.